Thank you for listening to Behind the Scenes at the Hanover Theatre. This is Lisa Conde, and I am on the phone with Michael O'Donnell, the resident director of Les Misérables, generously sponsored by the Guild of St. Agnes and coming here to the Hanover Theatre April 2nd through 7th. Welcome, Michael.
Well, it's nice to be on the radio with you, Lisa.
We are so excited for this performance, and you know, I have to tell you, it is a big part of our season this year. This is one of the only times that we're offering a full week run of a show, and everybody seems very excited and enthusiastic. And that was before the movie came out.
Well, we're thrilled as well.
So as the resident director, can you tell our listeners, what does that mean?
Well, there were two directors, James Powell and Lawrence Connor, who originated this version of Les Mis in the UK. Obviously, they can't travel with the show because they're off directing other projects at the moment. So they hired me to travel with the show and keep the show in tip-top shape and replace any actors that leave during the long run, because we're well into our second year now of the tour.
Right.
So there's a lot of sort of upkeep, and people sort of churn in and out of the show on a regular basis at this point.
Well, it's a big cast, and before we get into the features about the 25th anniversary production, let's just tell our listeners a little bit about you. You have an impressive background in and of itself. Why don't you tell people a little bit about what you've been doing?
Well, I started out as a performer myself. I was in 6 Broadway shows before doing this job, including Spamalot and the Roundabout's production of Cabaret, Victor Victoria, Pajama Game with Harry Connick Jr. So that was sort of the beginning of my career's. My career start was as a dancer and a performer, and now I've sort of segued into directing, and I've gone on to restage the Roundabout Theater's production that Sam Mendes directed of Cabaret in Paris and in other parts of New York. So that sort of started me on the road to directing and resident directing.
Right. And then you were also the associate director of the national tour of Monty Python's Spamalot. We did have Spamalot at the Hanover Theatre, and again, that was one of our audience favorites as well. The other thing that I think is interesting, and first of all, let me just say I'm always partial to dancers because long ago I was a dance major. So any dancer is a friend of mine, number one. But number two, you were what's called an observing director on 2 of my favorite TV programs, Weeds and Brothers and Sisters.
Absolutely. You did your research.
Well, you know, I have a really good person, Laurie Carr, who helps me do that. But, you know, tell people what the difference is between being an observing director or a director for a TV production versus live theater.
Oh, it's night and day. There's so much. I mean, both of them are very, very difficult jobs to have. There's so much preparation that goes behind both of these art forms. But, you know, in television, so many people work on just getting these bits and pieces, moments at a time. I mean, you'll generally, on both of those shows, we were shooting 7 pages a day,
wow,
which is actually quite fast. But when you think about Les Mis now, it has a running time of just under 3 hours. You know, that's over 150 pages of text that you deliver 8 times a week,
wow,
as opposed to just getting that one single take for a television show that you think is worthwhile. So there's a lot of waiting around in television. There are long, arduous days, and in theater it's different. You do all your preparation, and it's a continual process, because I'm noting the show every single day. I'm watching the actors. I'm putting new actors in. So it has a lot more continual life to it than live theater does, anyway.
Well, and it's interesting, too, from an audience perspective. You know, I don't know about you, but I'm rarely home when my favorite TV programs are actually on. So that means I'm really watching it on demand, or people are DVRing it. And a lot of people, if it's a favorite scene, they might watch it again and again and again. Whereas with live theater, it comes, you experience it, and it's the whole total experience, and you can't actually dwell on the details of 30 seconds like you can, I think, for TV. So I think that's pretty interesting, and I'm glad you gave us a little perspective as far as how long it takes to prepare the material. I mean, obviously, the difference there is people are going to watch and perhaps rewatch what you're doing instead of experiencing it.
Absolutely, absolutely, and not to say that people don't return time and again to a show to experience it, but every time they come, which I think is the thrill of live theater, it's a completely different experience. Not only because each actor has different nuances in every show that they do, but having a show of 40 actors on stage and a long-running production such as this, someone will be on vacation the next day, or someone will become ill and have to be out for a few shows. So not only is each performer's performance different, but the cast will be different on a regular basis, which to me is absolutely thrilling.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And that's why a lot of times people will come, they'll check out a show, and then they'll come back with their family or friends because they loved it so much. They want to they want to share that experience with them. So tell us some of the new features about the 25th anniversary production for people, say, who have seen the show before.
Yes. Well, I think the most outstanding portion of the show, and what people will notice most if they have seen the show Les Mis in previous productions, is there is no turntable, and or what they call the revolve in the UK. This is something that sort of defined the production 25 years ago, and is no longer with this production because Cameron McIntosh was a smart enough man to realize, hey, we've got to rethink this, and we've got to and give people a different look at this score and this libretto. And one of the main features of the show is Matt Kinley, the scenic designer, the brilliant scenic designer, introduced projections to this production, which add a great deal of life to the show. And, the scope of the show is so vast. The novel is over 1,000 pages long. And it's hard to sort of smush that into 3 hours, but it's very helpful when you have these wonderful projections in the show, and sometimes they're animated. I don't want to give away too much, but you just feel that you're in Paris, or you're in the sewers, or you're on the barricade. It really comes out and envelops the audience that way, and is quite beautiful. Another thing that I didn't even realize until I was working on this show several years ago, Victor Hugo, who wrote, obviously, the novel in 1863, was also a fantastic painter. Oh. And the creatives thought wisely and used those paintings as many of the backdrops in this production.
Oh,
so not only do you have the great characters that Victor Hugo created, but you have so many of his wonderful impressionistic paintings as the backdrops of this show, and I find that to be exciting.
Absolutely. I cannot wait to see the projections, as you had said. It's funny because, as a marketing person, sometimes you take things for granted. And when I was, again, watching TV early one morning and I saw our TV spots come on, I honestly thought it was for the movie instead of for the theatrical production, because the quality is so fabulous, Just as far as I think what you were saying about the projections and, the different special effects and the lighting, it's phenomenal. So for people who have seen the movie and loved that, think about actually being in the middle or close to that live action. I don't think that you can substitute that in any way,
Oh no! And we have a fantastic orchestra as well. And these are new orchestrations, again, different from the original production 25 years ago. So they basically did a ground-up restoration of the show. So this is not some sort of churned-out material again. Every bit of the show was thought through again, and dramaturged and reorchestrated and restaged, and it seems so fresh and alive and powerful.
I'm so glad you used that word dramaturg, because that no, I really am, because we in the fall had a dramaturg at the theater, and I don't think people understand what that's all about. Can you just, for our audience's sake, kind of touch on that? What do you mean when you say it's been dramaturged?
Sure. Well, whenever a new piece comes into either a producer's office or in the hands of a director, they may want to take it to someone whose sole job is to comb through the script, make sure it it has, well, they have very technical terms for sort of A, B, C characters, make sure the relationships are cohesive, make sure the time period is appropriate, make sure the language is appropriate for that time period. Even to some of them even go as far as examining costume sketches and designs to make sure that everything is as up to snuff as it should be in a script. What I call sort of a bulletproof script, or libretto in this case. As you know, there are no spoken lines in this show, so it spans the sort of crevasse between old school American musical theater, used to have a book scene and then some songs and opera, and so this sort of falls in the middle. So to dramaturg a piece like this is pretty difficult, I would think.
I would say so. And it's interesting too, because this piece was written the book was written almost 200 years ago, right? I mean, 150, who's counting? 150 to 200 years ago. But the themes are still very relevant for what's happening in our society and in our world. Is there anything you want to say and comment on that?
Well, I absolutely think it's such a human story, and in that Victor Hugo wrote in so many characters, he can't, but every now and then hit something that's sort of relevant. So I do think there's whether it's I do think one of the main themes, especially between Jean Valjean and Jean Vert, Javert is very by the book. He's old school, and Jean Valjean is much more about a man trying to find himself. So, one of the main themes is, what do we do with someone who has lost their way? It's a question of, is the penal system working? Did they take this man who was put into prison and turn him into a better man, or did going into prison make him worse off? And so that's just one of the themes that I think we always have to ask ourselves as a society. What is just, and what is justice, and what is redemption? I think that's something that we'll always ask ourselves. And it is the root of this. The show starts with Jean Valjean as a convict on his 19th year when he's finally being released, and all he did was steal a loaf of bread. Well, that doesn't seem very fair, does it? And so it's a question that about what is right and what is wrong. And the thing I think that keeps this show going is the character of Javert, who plays who becomes police inspector, basically, who keeps tracking Jean Valjean down, is not incorrect in doing so. Technically, Jean Valjean broke the law. And you just have to ask yourself, well, is this fair or is this not? So there are two men doing what they think is right, and they're on opposing sides of what we, in contemporary society, call the law.
We're looking forward to seeing you at the theater. You have a fabulous day, and we'll talk to you soon.